Welcome to GeoVenture. Please like and subscribe for more adventures. You think you know ancient Egypt? Think again. The pyramids, the mummies, the golden masks, they're iconic. But what if I told you some of what we believe is totally, completely wrong? Our modern view is a collage of Hollywood films, half-remembered history lessons, spectacular museum exhibits. But the reality, the lived experience, was far more nuanced, more complex, and more fascinating than the myths we've constructed. The truth is buried under sand and under layers of misunderstanding. So, ready to dig deeper? Rapid-fire archaeological expedition of the mind. We'll separate fact from fiction across 10 distinct rituals and practices that defined ancient Egyptian life and death. We'll challenge pop culture cliches and replace them with historical clarity. When you hear mummy, you probably picture a linen-wrapped figure, arms crossed, maybe lurching through a dusty tomb. Not a horror trope, a profound act of faith, and a surprisingly scientific process. Its primary purpose was to preserve the body, cat, so the soul's other aspects could recognize it and reunite. K, the life force but personality. Without the physical form, the Egyptians believed the spirit's journey would be jeopardized. It was a bridge, not a prison. Myth. Brain discarded as useless. In reality, the brain was removed, often through the nose with a long hook. Not because it was unimportant. They didn't associate consciousness with the brain. That belonged to the heart. Embalmers were meticulous, not careless. They understood decomposition, removal of internal organs, desiccation with natron salt, practical steps to halt decay honed over centuries. Lungs, stomach, intestines. Each jar was protected by one of the 4 sons of Horus, acting as divine guardians for the deceased's viscera. This wasn't just practical organ storage, it was a deeply religious act, ensuring every part of the person was sanctified and protected for its journey. The heart, however, was almost always left inside the body. It was considered the seat of intelligence and emotion, and it would be needed for the final judgment. The elaborate wrapping process we see in films was the final stage. Hundreds of yards of linen strips were used, with magical amulets and written spells tucked between the layers. Each fold was a prayer, each knot a seal of protection. This wasn't a rushed, macabre procedure. It was a sacred, ritualistic art form that could take up to 70 days to complete, a testament to their belief that death was not an end, but a transition that required careful, loving, and scientifically sound preparation. So, mummification was a blend of faith and pragmatism. The religious goal was eternal life, but the methods were rooted in a practical understanding of chemistry and biology. They weren't just wrapping corpses, they were meticulously crafting vessels for eternity, ensuring the deceased had a physical anchor in a world beyond our own. The Book of the Dead sounds like a single, ominous tome, a dark grimoire bound in human skin. But that's a Hollywood invention. There was no one book. The term actually refers to a collection of magical spells and texts, known to the Egyptians as the spells for coming forth by day. These were customized collections of incantations, personal cheat sheets for the afterlife, assembled for individuals who could afford them. No 2 copies are exactly alike. Think of it not as a book, but as a personalized travel guide for the perilous journey through the Duat, the Egyptian underworld. The deceased would need to navigate treacherous landscapes, face terrifying demons, and answer riddles from divine gatekeepers. These spells were the answers, or the power to transform into a falcon to soar past an obstacle. It was a divine instruction manual. Scribes would write the hieroglyphic texts on papyrus, often accompanied by beautiful, vibrant illustrations or vignettes, showing the spell in action. The selection of spells depended on the owner's budget and personal preferences. So, forget the idea of a singular, evil book. The Book of the Dead was a deeply personal, practical, and hopeful tool. The climax of the soul's journey is the weighing of the heart. For the Egyptians, it was a moment of profound cosmic balance. The god Anubis would oversee the weighing, while Thoth recorded the result. We imagine Egyptian temples as grand, open spaces, bustling with crowds of worshippers. This is a fundamental misunderstanding. The main temple complex was considered the literal home of a god on earth. It was a sacred, exclusive space. Access was highly restricted. At dawn, priests would break the clay seal and open the naos. They would awaken the statue. They ritually purified it with water. They clothed it in fresh linen. They adorned it with jewels. They offered it food and drink. The god was believed to inhabit the statue. Offerings sustained its spirit and ma'at. This reversion of offerings was a key economic function, sustaining priests, scribes, and artisans. Grand festivals let the public glimpse the statue in procession. But daily life was intimate, exclusive, a quiet service by a dedicated few. Egyptians did not worship the animal itself, but worshiped the divine attributes the animal embodied. A cat wasn't just a cat. Grace, fertility, protective nature, manifestations of Bastet. The bull wasn't just livestock, strength, virility, earthly vessel for Apis. CT scans reveal the economy beneath, complete animals, partial remains, and some fakes. You didn't pray to a cat, you offered a mummified cat to Bastet. Divine kingship was more an office than an innate state. The king was the human incarnation of Horus, yet he was mortal. Coronation ceremonies transformed prince into ruler. He received the crowns, the scepter, and royal names linking him to the gods. The said festival, the aging king performed feats of ritual strength to rejuvenate his reign. The pharaoh's divinity was functional, sole intermediary and upholder of Ma'at. He relied on a bureaucracy, viziers, scribes, officials. His power could be challenged. At death, his divinity was completed. He merged with Osiris. The new king became Horus. Amulets were wearable technology. Ankh, life, Jed, stability, Eye of Horus, healing and protection. Form, color, and material amplified potency. Green for rebirth, lapis for the divine, carnelian for vital force. A pregnant woman wore taweret, a scribe carried thoth, not force fields, divine insurance to tip the scales in your favor. In death, amulets multiplied, especially the heart scarab, inscribed to keep the heart from testifying against its owner. A magical failsafe for the most critical moment of the afterlife. The image of treasure-filled tombs is a distortion. Most burials were humble. Goods were practical provisions for the field of reeds, magically functional in the afterlife. Shabtis did labor for the dead. Standard sets could be extensive, with overseers. For most people, a few necessities and desert dryness achieved a poor man's mummification. The curse was media hype. Ancient curse texts aimed at deterring robbers, who often came anyway. The treasures were not for us, they were for the dead. Festivals were how the people engaged their gods, vibrant, noisy, and public. Priests carried sacred barks through Thebes as the city lined the route. It was celebration, feasting, drinking, music, a carnival of belief. The state provisioned the crowd, forging social cohesion. Families camped at tombs and shared meals with the dead, the boundaries blurred. Daily cults were private. Festivals were religion for the people. The divine came out as celebration, feasting, community. But their purpose and construction are shrouded in myth. Built by slaves, built by aliens. The truth, pyramids were royal tombs. Only during specific periods, Old and Middle Kingdoms, not the final word, just steps in a long architectural evolution. Imhotep revolutionized the mastaba, creating the step pyramid, a stairway to the stars. True pyramids refined the form, likely evoking the sun god Ra's rays. Evidence shows skilled Egyptian laborers, fed, treated, and buried with honor. The slave story comes from later Greek and biblical accounts. Pyramids shouted, "Treasure here!" Most were robbed in antiquity. security over spectacle, hidden rock-cut tombs in a remote valley. So there you have it. Ancient Egypt was far more complex, practical, and relatable than myth. Which of these fascinated you the most? Let me know in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching.